What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today to bring you the tale of the tape for Kenneth Walker, the third running back out of Michigan State. This is going to be everything that you need to know about each prospect. So if you guys haven't already checked out the other tale of the tape videos, go back and watch those as well. But basically what we're doing with these prospects, we're breaking them down the entire story from start to finish for Dynasty rookie drafts this spring. In this video, we are going to be talking about Kenneth Walker, as I mentioned. Our sponsors over at Underdog are running a special promo right now for the Super Bowl. You can get a free boosted line, Joe Burrow over under 1 passing yard. Obviously, you're going to take the over on that. And you can basically max out a pick'em contest on Underdog Fantasy. If you guys are interested, promo code FSE at sign up and first deposit will get you a 100% match back on your first deposit. So if you put up $25, you'll get $50 insight credit to use on the site right now for the Super Bowl. So get some action on the big game this Sunday as well. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy this video. Now let's hit the intro. Alrighty, so Kenneth Walker, running back from the Michigan State Spartans. You guys can see his tail of the tape on the screen right now. He is 21.3 years old right now, 5'10", 206 pounds. Basic information and background on Kenneth Walker. He was a 3-star back coming out of high school, ranked 143 in his class among all running backs. He committed to Wake Forest. He played 2 very uninspiring seasons at Wake Forest, rushing for exactly 579 yards in both his freshman and his sophomore year, with a 5.3 yards per carry in his career at Wake Forest. And then in 2021, he transfers to Michigan State, and he blew the doors off of college football for about 10 straight games, finishing 6th in Heisman voting overall with 1,600 rushing yards, 264 rushing attempts, 19 total touchdowns. This dude was pretty much the tail of, college football for most of the season. Everybody was excited to watch this guy. He was electric in space. Everything about Kenneth Walker was exciting in his Michigan State career, but we got to wonder, right? He wasn't productive early in his career. Is he just a one-year wonder? Did the stars align? Did he get better as a player? Probably a mix of all of those factors. So let's start with the 6 fundamental traits of elite fantasy running backs. For each of these traits, I'm going to talk about what I saw in film first with Kenneth Walker, and then the accompanying metric to either confirm or deny basically what I saw on film with Kenneth Walker. So like I said, with the 6 fundamental fantasy traits that we need for running backs, most prospects and most even elite fantasy running backs don't check off every box in spades. We're using this as a measure of a player's ceiling. We're using this as a measure of, our projection for how they can become an elite fantasy running back, their path to elite production, as I've talked about in the past. So number 1 is elusiveness. Now, this one is pretty much non-negotiable, right? I think you need to have this to be a fantasy relevant running back in general. And if you don't have this, you're probably not going to be very good at the next level. But thankfully, Kenneth Walker, this trait stands out immediately with him. It is clearly his best attribute, in my opinion. He's quick. He's twitchy in rushing lanes. He's quick and twitchy behind the line of scrimmage. He's quick and twitchy in pretty much every facet of playing the running back position. He has great footwork, natural agility. He can make you miss in a phone booth, as the expression goes, without losing any momentum in stride while he's running the ball. You can see throughout the clips that I'm playing right now that it comes very natural to him. If he has a guy right in front of him, he has no problem sticking his foot in the ground, making that guy miss. He has no problem when he's running in a straight line and a defender approaches him to make him miss in as few steps as possible. The numbers back this up unequivocally as well. He is very, very elusive per the metrics as well. PFF elusiveness rating, he ranks number 1 in the entire draft class by a pretty decent margin as well, with a 147.5 PFF elusive rating. And he ranks number 1 in tackles avoided per attempt, with 33.09% of his total attempts, he's avoiding a tackle on them. So he's clearly very elusive. He checks this box in spades. Let's move on to contact balance. Basically, if you can't make people miss, can you at least break contact? And most good running backs can do both. They can make people miss either with physicality or with elusiveness. And for a smaller back, he's listed either around 210, depending on if you look at Michigan State's website. Playerprofiler.com has him listed as 206, which I think is a little bit more accurate. He runs tough and physical as well. If you watch him play, he can break arm tackles. He can drag defenders. He can use his footwork to stay balanced after he initially faces contact. Everything about Kenneth Walker is very fundamentally sound when he's running the ball. You'll see him finishing runs as well. When he's done, a long run, if he runs for like 15 yards or something, he'll put his head down, his shoulder down, and take out the guy in front of him. That's just the type of runner that he is. He's breaking a lot of tackles in these clips, as you guys can see, against pretty good competition like Michigan as well. He actually led all running backs in this draft class with 4.46 yards after contact per attempt. Now, the one thing I will say about that metric is that some of it is skewed by the fact that he'll get contacted in the backfield and then run for an 80-yard touchdown, right? And that goes into yards after contact per attempt, which is why we also watch the film, right? We also want to see them breaking contact consistently and not just, padding their stats by breaking away a lot of runs. But regardless, he handled contact very well, much better than Breece Hall, who I talked about in the first running back video. We're going to talk about Isaiah Spiller in the coming days, who I think handles contact just a bit better than Kenneth Walker, but still very, very good in that regard. Number 3 is receiving ability. Now, you're probably thinking so far in this video that, wow, Kenneth Walker sounds great. He's really elusive, great under contact, but this is where shit hits the fan. And if you know anything about Kenneth Walker, you know what I'm about to say. Kenneth Walker has a massive, massive red flag in this category. Now, let's start with the film. And on film, he just doesn't look natural catching the ball. He doesn't look like he's had a lot of experience doing it. That's fine. Maybe you can get more experience, get some coaching at the NFL level, but it almost reminds me of like a Ronald Jones in college, right? He didn't catch the ball, hasn't been able to do it in the NFL either, but maybe with work ethic, with coaching, Kenneth Walker can adjust that part of his game. And it also almost reminds me of Travis Etienne, his first 2 years at Clemson, where there was a quote that came out during his sophomore year that he's like afraid to catch the ball. But then, of course, in his junior and senior seasons, he had very good target shares, was very involved in that aspect of his game. Unfortunately, we didn't get to really see that out of Kenneth Walker. He can catch the ball. If you throw the ball to him, he'll probably catch it. He had 0 drops this season, but commanding a 5.4% target share as the clear best player on your offense, clear best player on your team probably as well, is a huge problem. If you can't command targets, being the best player on your team, it's not like he played for Alabama or LSU or Clemson or Ohio State, where you got to compete with all these receivers and tight ends and stuff for targets. He was the dude on his offense. So if you can't command more than a 5.4% target share at that point, that's a problem. 89 receiving yards on 18 targets in his, Heisman finalist season is pretty brutal. And Walker had a career 19 receptions over his entire 3-year collegiate career, going back to his days at Wake Forest and Michigan State, where again, he is the clear best player on both of those teams. This season, he ranked second to last in the class with 0.44 yards per route run. His PFF receiving grade was 5th worst in the class, 61.8. And this was despite him actually running a lot of routes. So he ran 204 routes, which is as many as Rachaad White ran, who has a lot of receiving production, and more than Isaiah Spiller ran, who also was pretty good in that facet as well. He was out there. He had the opportunity. He just could not command targets. On the screen, you guys will see a thread from JJ Zachariason, who's obviously a staple of the fantasy community. And in this thread, he's talking about Kenneth Walker and how under a 6% reception share in college is a major red flag, because going back to 2011, a lot of the guys that he has in this database, there's not a lot of guys that got top 100 draft capital that also were very productive in fantasy, right? You could see Ronald Jones, Deontay Foreman, Derrick Henry, Kenyon Drake, and Christine Michael are the only guys to get top 100 draft capital and sub 6% reception share of their college offenses. You can also see that Chris Carson and Jordan Howard were the only guys to finish with 15 plus PPR points in a single season from years 1, 2, 3, with under a 6% reception share. And basically he says, for the record, Derrick Henry didn't actually start beasting until year 4 of his NFL career. And we also have the common thing that you're going to see when people talk about Kenneth Walker was, well, Jonathan Taylor wasn't very involved in his college receiving game, and he, has been very good in the NFL. But the difference between Kenneth Walker and Jonathan Taylor is, one, Jonathan Taylor rushed for like 3 seasons of 2,000 yards. So he was clearly a better runner than Kenneth Walker in college. He's also 6 foot, 230 pounds and runs 4.39. So until Kenneth Walker is that big, that productive, and that, fast in the ground game, I can't project any kind of Jonathan Taylor level outcome for Kenneth Walker as a smaller running back who wasn't nearly as productive as Jonathan Taylor. And I got to remind all of you as well that maybe if you guys are very high on Kenneth Walker, I'm not shitting on him necessarily, but there's plenty more running backs in the NFL that we can say, oh, that's why he wasn't used as a receiving threat in college. Then there is, well, he can do it, but he just wasn't used that way, because he was used as a receiver. He ran a lot of routes, just couldn't command targets. It's about making the best bet possible. Could Walker become a better receiver at the NFL level? It's definitely possible, but the numbers suggest that the odds are very stacked against him based on his college target share, based on how he looks on film as a receiver as well. So with 2 schools not wanting to target their best player, that is fishy to me. It means that he's probably not very good in that aspect of his game. And I'm going to trust Wake Forest and Michigan State's evaluation of that, being that they didn't target him very often. I don't think NFL teams will as well. Number 4, we go from a negative to a positive. Obviously, scoring ability, his ability to put the ball in the paint, put the ball in the end zone is very, very good. He has a nose for the end zone. You can see it on film very evidently. His contact balance, his elusiveness, those 2 fundamental traits that I talked about already, they show up to a very, very high degree when he's in the red zone, when he's in, short areas, when everything's compact. He can get skinny. He can find pay dirt, which is very, very valuable for fantasy, as we saw from guys like Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, Ezekiel Elliott. These guys that can score touchdowns are going to be fantasy relevant. He ranks number 4 in this class with 1.13 touchdowns per game over his college career, and he had 32 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, 19 touchdowns this year with Michigan State in 19 games, 32 touchdowns. Very, very good over his final 2 seasons of his college career. By now, you're probably beginning to formulate a path for Kenneth Walker to become a productive fantasy player. He clearly needs to be the primary ball carrier of an offense and get a lot of touchdown opportunity, which is fine. But number 5 is pass protection, right? Can you stay on the field on third down? I already kind of talked about how he's not very good as a receiver, but third down all around is a problem. He is no better in pass protection, in my opinion, than he is as a receiving threat. When he does stop opposing defenders in pass protection, he'll usually just get in their way or take their knees out, which might work in college. But in the NFL, defenders are bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, and they're a lot smarter too. They know that's what you're trying to do. They'll hurdle you, they'll go around you, they'll power through you. Whatever the case is, Kenneth Walker needs major help in pass protection. He gets overpowered often when he does actually stand a defender up, and he isn't great at reading protections. He isn't great at reading blitzes. And when he does chip block and then run a route, he's not very timely when he does it. He'll like stand there too long, not get out on his route. What I need you to do, obviously, if I'm a coach, is chip the defender, get out on your route, give your quarterback an option to catch the football. His PFF pass protection grade was very bad. 41.3 pass protection grade, ranks 7th lowest in this class, and his pass blocking efficiency of 94.0 ranks below average in this class as well. So needless to say, whatever team he ends up going to is going to need to have a third down back in place. Walker is likely going to be in a committee deployed with a Nyheim Hines type, a JD McKissick type, whatever team he ends up going to. They're probably going to need a pass catching back on the roster, because I don't think Kenneth Walker is very equipped in this area. Maybe he becomes a better pass catcher year 3, year 4 of his career. But in Dynasty, we know time is money. If he can't do it year 1 or year 2, then people are going to give up on him. He's going to lose a lot of value. And that is the big part of playing Dynasty that people underestimate, is that if this guy needs time to develop, if he's a project type of running back, then we're not going to see that value until year 3, year 4, when his value is already tanked and we're stuck at a hold position. We can't necessarily buy him or sell him high at that point in time. So number 6, home run ability, the JT, Saquon, Derrick Henry factor. I don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this. He's definitely explosive. He can definitely take it the distance. Curious to see how fast he ends up running. But any highlight tape that you throw up of Kenneth Walker features breakaway run after breakaway run. He leads the 2022 class with 30 breakaway runs of 15 plus yards. 46 plays of 10 plus yards or more, also leads the class in that category. His breakaway play percentage, 10.91% of his runs went for breakaway runs, ranks second only to Kennedy Brooks in this class, and first among all the running backs that had a lot of volume. My only concern is how fast is he? And if he runs 4.4s, I have no concern. But if he runs 4.55 and his one of his biggest hallmark traits is breakaway runs, and he runs in the mid 4.5s, that's going to be a problem, obviously. But I think he's probably going to run in the 4.4 somewhere, so no concerns there. The subjective traits, as I talked about, those are the 6 fundamental traits of the running back position. Now we get into the subjective ones, the things like vision that we can't necessarily see, but we think are there, patience, football IQ, toughness, things like that, where, depending on who you ask, they might be very good in this area. They might be, need some work, need some refinement in this area. For me, the subjective traits were definitely there for Kenneth Walker. He's definitely a refined runner of the football, runs with patience, good vision. He lets his blocks develop. When he sees a hole, he hits it with good decisiveness. And that's, what led to a lot of those home runs that he hit in college. His football IQ is definitely lacking on third down, as I kind of mentioned already. And then physicality wise, he's very good. He plays like a bulldog. He's a smaller running back, but he's definitely tough, physical. So no concerns on that front. Now we get into athleticism. Like I said already, his 40 time is important because he is a breakaway type of runner. It's part of what made him successful in college. I think it's going to be part of what makes him successful in the NFL as well. So he needs to be fast enough. He needs to be a 4.4 type of running back, in my opinion, because that is the type of player that he is. He's going to break off those chunk plays, breakaway runs, and help, provide those type of long plays that lead to a lot of fantasy production for us. Agility times, once he actually, does his agility drills, I'm expecting him to be among the best in the entire class. His agility is very, very good. So if he tests poorly in agility, that's going to be a problem, but I don't think he will. I think he's going to be among the best in the class from that perspective. Size is also going to be extremely important. Once he goes to the combine, what does he weigh? How big is he? Because if he is like, he's listed 5'10", 210, I don't think he's that big personally. I don't think he's 5'10", 210. Player Profiler has him listed 5'10", 206. I think that's a little bit more accurate. If he comes in at 200 pounds, that's going to be a problem. He just needs to clear 205 pounds, in my opinion, because typically that's the threshold we see for a shorter running back who's 5'10". You can be 205 pounds and be just fine because your BMI is generally in a pretty good spot at that point, as we saw from a guy like DeAndre Swift, who's like 5'9", 206 pounds. That is definitely okay. But if he weighs, 200 pounds or 195 pounds, that is going to be a big time problem. Now let's get into final grades. Obviously, these are based on a scale of 1100, as I talked about already. His final grade for me was 765 out of 1100, or an early third rounder. Now, I cannot give a running back a second round grade with this many red flags on third down. I just can't do it. He can't pass protect. He needs a lot of work in that department. He also needs so much work in the receiving game as well to improve his stock as an NFL caliber running back, as a fantasy caliber running back. If you guys are curious where you should draft this guy in a rookie draft, I mean, I'm going to have a hard time ranking him in the first round. And it's not because I don't think he's a good runner of the ball. I think he's probably the best runner of the ball in the entire class. But that role doesn't have a whole lot of value in the NFL. You need to be on the field on third down to be productive for fantasy. Now, I don't know how much these back end of the first round wide receivers are going to stack up against Kenneth Walker's overall grade, as well as some of the quarterbacks and maybe even a tight end or two in this class. But Kenneth Walker, to me, as like the 106, 105 in this class is too high, in my opinion. I think that's way too high for the skill set that he's going to give you. He's probably going to settle in between 109 and 112 of my rankings, maybe even later, depending on his draft capital. So far, I've graded 4 running backs in this class: Isaiah Spiller, Breece Hall, Tyler Algier, and Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is the 4th graded running back that I have graded so far. Ironically, my comp for him is a Memphis running back, and I'll get to that in a second. But my grade for him, 765 out of 1100, is exactly the same grade I had on Kenneth Gainwell last year. So if we're talking about the type of range in the draft that you guys are thinking, Kenneth Gainwell fell to the 5th round of the actual NFL draft, but had he gotten better draft capital, would have been like an early second round type of rookie pick. That's what we're talking about with Kenneth Walker, in my opinion. Chuba Hubbard, Elijah Mitchell, Khalil Herbert, and Ramondre Stevenson were the guys that immediately followed Kenneth Gainwell in my rookie rankings last year, and they were pretty close behind those guys as well. So that's the type of running back that I view Kenneth Walker as. Actual NFL teams might view him a little bit better than I have him, maybe in that late second round, early third round grade that I gave him. They're probably going to draft him in that type of range in the draft. I think that's a little bit too high, in my opinion. But if he does get second round draft capital, if he does get early third round draft capital, I have no problems taking this guy as a back end first round pick. But I also wouldn't be shocked if the NFL, like me, is a little bit lower than on Kenneth Walker than the fantasy community is, and he slips to early day 3, similar to what we saw from Michael Carter last year, who in my opinion was a far superior prospect on the fundamental traits of a running back than Kenneth Walker is. So comparable players, I already kind of touched on it. Pro comparison for the player is a guy who went to Memphis. Now, when you actually watch Kenneth Walker play, I've seen Noshawn Marino thrown out. I've seen Tony Pollard thrown out. I've seen, a number of other different running backs. I do see Noshawn Marino when I actually watch him. But when you look at his skill set, what he does well, what his weaknesses are, I actually compare him to Darrell Henderson. Now, if you watch Darrell Henderson's Memphis film versus Kenneth Walker's Michigan State film, they don't look the same. They don't run the same way. Kenneth Walker's a lot more fluid, a lot more laterally agile than Darrell Henderson, who I think is a little bit more stiff, a little bit more of a straight line runner, but their skill sets are very similar. They both were pretty elusive. They both have good contact balance, home run ability. And I had question marks about Darrell Henderson's ability to play on third down coming out of Memphis as well, which is why I have the comparison for Kenneth Walker as Darrell Henderson. And I think with Darrell Henderson, he went in the mid third round of the NFL draft. The Rams traded up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to get Darrell Henderson. I think that's about the range of the draft that we're talking about with Kenneth Walker, in that top 75, top 100 range of the NFL draft. When you talk about best fits, the best way for Kenneth Walker to achieve his ceiling, which I think his ceiling is probably capped as like a mid RB2, high end RB2 at best, is to be the ball carrier for a team that's going to score a lot and who's going to run in the red zone a lot. And I think Miami makes a lot of sense for that, because while they're not the greatest offense in the world, they do have some young pieces. They're an up and coming offense. They couldn't run the ball this year at all. And Kenneth Walker can definitely help with that. He's clearly a very good runner of the ball. and you have Myles Gaskin in house, right? He can play on third downs. He can pass protect. He can catch the ball, and you can take Kenneth Walker off the field, give Kenneth Walker 15 to 18 carries per game. Like I said, that's going to limit his upside as a high-end RB3, mid RB2 at best. The Jets also make a lot of sense. They have Michael Carter to play third downs if they want Kenneth Walker to replace like Tevin Coleman type of role that they had in mind for him. If the Cardinals retain a guy like Chase Edmonds, Kenneth Walker makes a lot of sense to replace James Conner as well. So that's kind of the long and short of Kenneth Walker. If you guys are curious and you want more access to our information, you want to see these player cards like I showed already, you can go to patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange to become a member of the Patreon. There you'll get access to our dynasty rankings, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, top 100 for Superflex, one quarterback. You'll also get our rankings by age bucket as well. So if you're curious of the foundational running backs, the in their prime running backs, the foundational wide receivers, who is the best, who we prefer, you can get that patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. As I mentioned, we will have rookie rankings, of course, coming in the next couple of weeks. As we continue to watch these players, we will update those rankings. We'll probably have a separate sheet of rookie rankings, and then we'll start to integrate those into our dynasty rankings overall. So if you guys are interested in something like that, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange, where you can find it. Check out Underdog Fantasy as well. As I mentioned in the intro, they're running a special promo, Joe Burrow boosted line for their pick'em contest, promo code FSE at first sign up and deposit. You will get 100% match back on whatever you deposit on their site. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. Let me know what you think of Kenneth Walker in the comment section down below. Peace out, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.